The next guest that I have might have came up with some real solutions to help us in this Tirzepatide compounding crisis. I've heard every crazy idea under the sun as we all panicked for the last couple of months during this shortage time. This idea, though, is refreshing, and I actually believe that this one could work for at least some of you. What we're going to do right now is we're going to watch the video, and then Cam is going to join us after for Q&A.
I've been reading through the regulation in light of the FDA updating their status on the Tirzepatide shortage today, and something kind of occurred to me that I thought would be useful for some folks out there. And what I came across is essentially, this is just my opinion, I think what's happening is that a lot of the telehealth companies and pharmacies or whatever, they are trying to find a way around the regulation, the 503A, 503B regulation that determines, if it's a copy of a commercially available medication or product. Try not to say the DRUG word. Essentially, the regulation is split into two. It's split into if the compounded medication is a copy, and if it's not a copy. If it is a copy, one of the clauses states in the regulation that it cannot be regularly prescribed, which obviously is not going to work for the majority of people that are on compound because it needs to be prescribed regular. If it is not a copy of a commercially available product, then it can be regularly prescribed in any quantity. However, in order for it to be considered not a copy, it either has to be administered through a different route of administration, which is where you're getting all the injections versus the oral, sublingual, etc. Let's see here. It has to be 10% or more of a different strength, or it has to have an additive in it that's required or something taken out. Like if you're allergic to like a inactive ingredient within the name brand, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to this, it also states that the FDA can question if there are documents that show the determination was made for the medical necessity. So what that means is, let's say that you are working with a telehealth that has identified you need a strength that is outside of the normal dosing. So say it's like 3.5 milligrams because you can't do 2.5 and 5 is too strong. I'm just throwing out options here. Technically, if you have a medical necessity that requires that, then technically you could be allowed to get a compounded medication because the name brand doesn't fit your medical necessity. But here's the catch. The documentation, the regulation of the FDA clearly states that there has to be documents that show how the determination was made. It also says that the argument has to be made in documentation and on the prescription, on the RX. So what that means is that the doctor who has made the clinical determination that you need a different route of administration, if it's you can't do the injection because you need a sublingual tablet, or you need it in a pill form, or you have to have an inactive ingredient taken out, or you have to have B12 added to it, or you have to have this customizable dosing. It's supposed to be done on an individual's medical necessity. Now, what does this mean? So, if I was a doctor, I would be concerned about how I'm going to provide a medical necessity for the hundreds, if not thousands, of patients that I have to put my name on the script for to send it out to a pharmacy stating that these individuals need this customizable dosage or additive to the formulation. But as far as the consumers, that's not their problem. So if I was a person that depended heavily on compounded medication, and it was determined by my telehealth that I either needed to be on a special customizable dose or I needed to have some type of additive to prevent my nausea, etc., what I would do is I would request that medical records, that medical information from the telehealth and or doctor who has been prescribing you the medication. Because technically, according to the regulation, what should happen is if there is a practice happening where there is a doctor prescribing a medication to you, there should be some type of medical record. That medical record should annotate that the patient is taking 3.5 milligrams of Tirzepatide or whatever the random dosing is, and that they're taking that because they cannot take the dosage that has been determined by the manufacturer and the FDA. In that case, I would want to have that documentation that states, hey, I take 3.5 milligrams of Tirzepatide. I take Tirzepatide that has B12 added to it, and my medical reasoning behind it is etc. per my doctor from said telehealth. If you can get that medical documentation in hand, then let's say worst case scenario, if said telehealth has to shut down because of their cease and desist letters, then at least you have your medical records. So then maybe as like the final Hail Mary, if you're depending on compound, you can take that information to a local PCP in your area, explain to them my previous doctor per telehealth made the clinical decision that I needed to have this specific customizable dosage strength of this medication or this specific additive to this medication because I personally have a medical necessity. So, can you continue my care, new doctor in my area that I see in person, and possibly send this script to a local 503A pharmacy who can continue my continuity of care? That's what I would do. If you are at no other options, that's what I would do as the last Hail Mary. Now, will it work? I don't know. I'm just a random person on the internet. But I would suspect that due to, like, I don't know, HIPAA, they should be maintaining your medical records if there's doctors writing you scripts, no matter what telehealth you're associated with. I would just assume. And I would also assume that I have the right to request those medical records and that the doctor, I think, has to respond within like, I don't know, 30 days. And I would also assume that there should be some type of annotation of why I need a customizable dose or I need a B12 additive that would make the argument of why I have an individual patient necessity. And I would want those medical records, especially if it's going to be me to fight, if it's going to be my responsibility to fight for my continuity of care. So I think that if you're a person that depends heavily on compound and you're kind of worried about what the future is going to hold, we don't know what's going to happen with the FDA. We don't know what's going to happen with the court. But a way to protect yourself, if you are one of those individuals that does have a customizable dosage strength or does have some type of additive, that's been added to make the argument of why it's not a copy of a commercially available product. If you can get your hands on that documentation, and the documentation that has the doctor's information on why they clinically are prescribing this for your personal necessity, I would want to have a copy of that medical documentation. That way, I have the option to take it to another doctor in case the doctors from this telehealth are no longer available because they've been sued into the ground. And, I at least have a Hail Mary chance of hopefully getting with a doctor in my local area that can take that script, send it to a local compound pharmacy, and I can continue my continuity of care. Because if you think about how this is supposed to be done in the first place, that's kind of the intent behind it. You speak with the doctor, the doctor annotates, hey, my patient can't take, 5 milligrams because it's too strong. They can't take 2.5 because it's not effective. So I'm now saying that my patient needs 3.75. And that's not available through the name brand. It's available through a compound pharmacy. So me as the doctor has made that clinical determination. If that's the case, if your telehealth is doing customizable dosage or customizable whatever to prove patient necessity, if you're one of the telehealth platforms where you're having, specific questions that ask you about your experience in order to make a valid argument that based on how you answer the questionnaire, you qualify for a compound, then I would want to have that medical information that makes that determination of the doctor and who said I had a medical necessity. And I would want that documentation in my hands. And I would also want it because it is my right. Because as soon as that telehealth goes away or they disappear into thin air, you're going to be on your own. And if you can get if you can get the information to make the argument for yourself and advocate for yourself, that's probably going to be the best way to do it because it's going to be hard for telehealth to advocate for 10,000 people that have a medical necessity to get around this regulation. You have a better chance of advocating for yourself. But like I said, I'm just a random person on the internet. Take it with a grain of salt. This is Cam from Kansas. Out.
Kham, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and talk about this brilliant video that you made.
Oh, goodness. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's refreshing.
No, thank you. I put the video together and it's my opinion, it may or may not work, but just kind of like, like I said in the video, like a Hail Mary for people that are, on compound and, they feel like they really don't have another option, kind of what I would do or what I would at least try. It may or may not work. There may be things that I'm missing, but I mean, I think it's worth a shot.
I think it's the reason why it's so brilliant is because these telehealths that most of us use, they're just mass producing like thousands and thousands. And of course, that's who Lilly is going to go after. But it's going to be really hard to go after every single little ma and pop compounding pharmacy across America.
Right. Well, and not to mention if you have a legit medical necessity and you have the documentation to prove that, then really essentially you're not really doing anything wrong and according to at least how I read the regulation, it's the part that's going to be hard is for all of these telehealths and the providers that are under the telehealths along with the pharmacists who kind of get pulled into the ring to prove that all of these patients have a medical necessity now that there's no longer a shortage. But if you can get the documentation stating that, you needed a different route of administration, which is the actual verbiage in the regulation, or that you needed a customizable dosage strength that is above 10% of a change, these changes, or you needed something added to the medication or taken out of the medication, these are all valid arguments under the regulation, but you have to have the documentation to back it. The doctor has to write the documentation that backs the cause. And I would want that information in my possession. That way I can go to a local primary care. I can go to, someone in my area and they can send that script out to a compound and I have a chance of getting it filled on a one-to-one basis. Like I said, I think the problem is I don't know how the telehealth and the doctors and the pharmacies associated are going to make an argument for 100, 10,000, 100,000, however many people are gonna, try to do this through the telehealth route. But I think that you have a better chance of making the argument for yourself. But I don't know how you make that argument if you don't have any medical documentation to prove it.
Yeah.
And if you're working with the telehealth, most definitely, if you're paying a membership fee, I don't think it's too crazy to ask for the medical records that provide, the doctor's information and their clinical notes of why you needed a formulation outside of the name brand. Um, why would it be I guess my question would be, why would it be any different as opposed to you going to your local doctor's office or a hospital, et cetera, and asking to sign a medical release form for your information?
No, exactly, and then we're seeing more and more of these telehealths try to, like, pregame the law. Like, we can talk about Mochi because 'cause they're very public about it. I think we've all seen the formulation, the 2.2 to the 16 point something,
Right.
and trying to skirt that 10%. But if, they end up if the worst happens and they happen to get a cease and desist that they can't fend off, having the reason to why you had to go to 2.2 or 16.1 and taking that to your local doctor would would give you control back. I really think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it gives you some type of hope, but the problem with that, and this is just my opinion, if you look at the actual definition of customization or to customize something, it means that the actual definition is modified to suit a particular individual or task. Okay, so obviously we're not talking about a task modified to suit a particular individual. The problem with setting pre-customized dosing and then advertising it is it's not really customized because you're still creating dosage strengths for a mass amount of people. Customization is based off of the particular individual. And so really they didn't really come up with customizable dose. They just came up with their own dosing schedule that hasn't been FDA approved. Now, once again, that's not the patient's problem. That's on the telehealth, which is why I just really don't think any of this shit's gonna work long term. But it is what it is. So if you're a consumer, if you're the patient, go for it. If they're gonna offer it, screw it, go for it. But get that medical documentation that says I'm on 2.2 because of X, Y, and Z. I'm on whatever other customized dose they have because of X, Y, and Z. Because what they're doing is they're trying to get around the part of the 503A regulation that talks about what you can and cannot do if it is or is not a copy. First off, if it is a copy, and this is all coming out of the regulation, if it is a copy, you cannot even be prescribed it on a regular basis or in inordinate amounts. So that just cancels out everybody, right? But if it is not a copy, it can be regularly prescribed in any quantity. However, if it is not a copy, then it has to have a significant change. That means being either a different route of administration, either it has a significant change where something was added to or taken out, whether it's an inactive ingredient, etc., or it has to be above a 10% change, based off of the dosage strength. That's what everyone's trying to do. They're trying to find a way to get around the regulation to prove that it's not a copy of a commercially available product. Okay, you know what? Fine, whatever. But it also says here in the regulation that the FDA generally doesn't intend to question the doctors specifically. However, they will question if there are documents that show a determination was made. And it also states the argument has to be made on the RX, on the script. So if they're going to go about arguing that they're doing customizable dosing and it's not a copy of a commercially available drug product, you got to document it. That's the rules. It has to be documented for each specific patient. So theoretically, any person that is involved with these telehealths, even the one, that you mentioned, they should be able to contact that telehealth and request that information that describes why they're on a air quotes customizable dosage string. And if they have that information from the provider, along with the provider's information and the reason for the medical necessity, now you have your evidence of why you need compound in your possession. And that in this case is probably going to mean everything because that allows you to go and find your own provider and have that provider send it to a compound and do it in the way of which it was supposed to be done in the first place. If your medical necessity exists, if it's been documented correctly. That that's what I would do. That's what I would try for. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to at least try if your telehealth and your doctor's offices or however they're functioning with their platforms are actually maintaining the medical records as they should.
I think I would even take it a step farther on because most of these places have a monthly check-in. Every telehealth I've ever dealt with has a monthly check-in, a questionnaire that they send in. In the notes section, I would put in there, handling the new dose much better, thanks, and, please add this to my medical record or something.
Something,
Something
something.
that because I sincerely doubt that the reason for change now this is speculative, but I sincerely doubt the reason for change is gonna be noted in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of case files.
You know, that's the part where these doctors are really gonna have to get it together because somebody's name has to go on that script. I mean, so you because what people have to understand, and I don't even know if some of these doctors understand, is you really can't just take a medication that has been designated as commercially available and decide to take the active ingredient, conduct your own dosing schedule on it, and then just sell it. Like that doesn't exist, right? Like that's not a thing. Otherwise, any medication that's too expensive or that your insurance doesn't want to cover outside of GLP-1s, you would just be able to say, "Well, this it's too expensive through my insurance. Compound's gonna be cheaper. So instead of, making it a 6 milligram medication, just make it 4.5 or 7.8 milligrams and then have the compound do it so I can save money." That's essentially what you're saying. That's not a thing. It's never been a thing. It's never been a thing with any other medication unless you have a medical necessity. That's what people have to try to remember and get back to, right? That everything's being kind of gaslighted. A lot of people are being gaslighted by the situation and kind of what these telehealths are doing, trying to get around the regulation. But I understand that's also because of the price and accessibility, etc.
Yeah.
I get it. So this is what I would do if it were me.
And I think it's brilliant, and I think that just taking it a step farther and making sure that you notate something and hopefully if the worst happens inevitably and this all gets cut down and the cease and desist orders come from Eli Lilly's absolute army of litigation lawyers, if it
Right.
comes down and, they're knocking on the doors, at least you have your medical records and you have a Hail Mary play so you could take it to your own PCP, your own small town compounding pharmacy. And as far as I know, 503A pharmacies don't have to report the same way that 503B pharmacies do. So it's a little
Really?
bit might be a little easier to slip through the cracks.
It would most definitely would. I mean, and your local 503A is probably also not going to be mass producing,
Right.
the same medication over and over and over again. It may or may not work. The 503A may or may not even be able to get the active ingredient. It's a stretch, but it's something to try. It offers something instead of going to the extremes of the next route, especially if you're not familiar with, you know, research and everything like that. We want to keep people as safe as
Yeah.
possible. So that's what I would recommend people try. Try to get a hold of your telehealth. It'll in a sense demand your medical records because it's your right, and try to get something in paper that shows that a clinician has decided that you have a medical necessity for a dosage strength additive or different route of administration outside of the name brand medication. Because if they are prescribing it to you like that, wherever there's supposed to be some type of clinical documentation that notates why you're being prescribed that. So I would get that. I would get that and try to see if that is an option for you.
Hypothetically speaking, if they were to do this, they might want to shore up the notation first, I would assume. Shore up the notation, the fact that there is something in there that says this is why I need a specifically different dose.
Yes, and I would ask for that specifically.
Yeah,
I would ask.
before I request the medical records.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. With the clinician's information.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe even print out your documentation log through your portal as well, just so you have something. But it is a part of HIPAA, no matter even though they are telehealth, so you can get your medical records. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. If they're record keeping like they're supposed to, I don't see why it would be an issue. If they're documenting like the regulation says they're supposed to, if you're prescribing something that is not a copy of a commercially available product, I don't understand what the issue would be.
Yeah.
It's all in that documentation. So if everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, if everybody has their ducks in order and they're on their shit, I don't understand what the issue would be.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting if anybody's tried to get medical records through a telehealth, if they can share their experience down in the comments. I would be dying to know.
Yeah.
I
I
might
mean,
just do it. I've been through a couple of telehealths. I might just do it as an experiment to see how easy it's gonna be to request those records, and so we can look at it. Maybe I can send them to you. We can look at them and see how detailed the process has been.
yeah, and it would be interesting to see too how much information is within those records. How the doctors are documenting that, especially with the amount of medications that they have on a month to month basis and etc. So, but like I said, that's the reason why I keep saying it's not the consumer's fault, because the consumer, the patient, they're the one that gets screwed in all of this.
Yeah.
Like, they're the one that gets screwed between big pharma, between the telehealth, between the FDA, between everyone, the patient's the one that suffers. So, at the very least, what the patient can do is get the information so they can fight for their continuity of care.
That's why I think that your this, this Hail Mary idea of yours is so brilliant because ultimately I do think that there are gonna be significant legal challenges to these telehealths trying to manipulate United States patent law and
Yeah,
manipulate uh, the FDA's, what is it, the book, the act, FDA Food and Cosmetic Act. What is it called?
yeah, the Food, Drug, Cosmetic Act.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
trying to manipulate those rules and regulations. They're just gonna run this little gravy train as long and hard as they can. I appreciate that, but I just think at some point, unfortunately, it's gonna come to an end, and I really like this, have a what does Gigi Girl always say? Have a plan A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
E, F, and G. I like
Yep.
this as a an alternative plan. I think it's so, so smart.
Thank you. Yeah. And there's, hopefully, you got a couple months. Because like I said, I think they have to respond. I know you brought that up, Candace. I think if there's a request for medical records, they have to respond within a certain amount of time. So, I
30 days.
I would do that. 30, yeah, I would do that, and because what people have to remember too is telehealth companies, platforms, don't get me wrong, they were very, very helpful. They're great, but you don't absolutely need them, because if you think about what they're doing, all they're doing is setting you up with a doctor and a pharmacy. Y- you're going to get to the point where the middleman not may not be available. So if you take the middleman out now, or you prepare to take the middleman out and advocate for yourself, the transition is going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot easier for you to fight for yourself and your own medical necessity than leaving it up to a telehealth that has to fight for 10,000 people's medical necessity
Could,
when they all have
could the
the same art.
Could the patient take their script? And I know I mentioned the 50 the local compounding pharmacy, 'cause that's just what came to mind. But could they take their script from their local PCP and send it to, like, a Hallandale or a Red Rock for right now? Or do you think that they'll be shut down as well?
Honestly, I don't know. This is just speculation. The thing about the big pharmacies like those, I just still think it's gonna end up in someone's court, because they're mass producing so much that is now been determined that there's no longer a shortage. And per the regulation, it's on the physician and the pharmacist, which is how the regulation reads. And to the point where if the pharmacist um doesn't have the medical necessity on the RX, it's actually on the pharmacist to get a hold of the physician to verify. Like, they're kind of married to each other in this situation. So I don't know how that could potentially play out between, the bigger 503As, and I don't know.
No, you're probably right. It probably would be better to go local and on the outskirts of town kind of.
Yeah, That's what I would do. If you I mean, if your doctor if you have your medical records from, the telehealth doctor that states that why you needed a customizable dosage strength, and your new doctor that you see in person is able to take those medical records, add their opinion on it and continue your continuity of care, and you can find a, 503A in your local area that is willing to accept the script. I would just do it like that on a very low level, because that's how it was supposed to be done in the first place, on a very low level, low scale. And I would fight for myself. It's going to be hard to let a telehealth company or a compound pharmacy fight for you and 10,000 other people that all have the same argument. I would take the power away from them, put it back into my hands with the documentation I need, and go fight for myself.
Yeah. How the hell did you come up with this brilliant little idea of yours? It's so great.
I don't actually know. I was on a live earlier today and it just kind of hit. Like, I don't know. I was just talking about it on TikTok. I was on Kim's TikTok earlier, and it just kind of I don't know, I just really thought, like, what would I do if I was in this position? Like, if I really did not have another option, people are running out of time, we don't know what's gonna happen, that's what I would do. Even if it's a situation where the judge decides that they're gonna allow compounding until the case happens, even if it's a situation where people have another 6 months, 12 months, or whatever, I would start doing this now. I wouldn't wait. I would get my documentation. I would get on my customizable dosage strength. I would get, I would start a paper trail that shows I've been on a customizable strength, a different route of administration. I've been taking it with certain additives or certain inactive ingredients taken out. This is the reason why my doctor said I needed it this way. And here's my paper stack of proof that shows I have a medical necessity. I meet all the requirements per the regulation. I have the proof and the documentation. I don't care what happens to the rest of the 10,000, 100,000 people. Run me my script.
Right?
That's what I would do.
It's almost like creating like Kim always says, our friend Kim on TikTok. Like she always says about step therapy, documenting like all the stuff that you've done. Like when you're trying to get approved just for the drug in general through your insurance, documentation is key. So this is absolutely no different than establishing documentation to why you need your script to be different and why you need it compounded, customized.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, you have if the doctors are writing it that way and they're documenting as they should, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to access that information for yourself. That's just my opinion.
No, I think it's the law.
I I mean, I'm not a lawyer. It could be. I don't know. I mean,
Got the whole ass
you know.
government behind you on that one.
So, and like I said, everything else, whether or not the doctors are annotating properly, the medical records are available, how they get them to you, that's not your problem. That's not your problem. That's not the consumer's problem. You do what you got to do to protect yourself, and that's what I would do.
I love it. You're just so damn smart. I love it.
Thank you. Like I said, there may be holes in this that I'm not seeing. This is just something that I came up with today, and hey, hopefully, maybe it helps. Maybe it works for at least one or two people out there.
Yeah.
And if not, then take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, no, I think it would work it may not work for every single person. Your doctor may not be receptive to the idea of compound or the X, Y, and Z. Maybe find a new doctor.
Right. 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 But if you can get the paperwork, then if you need to, find a new doctor, that's step two. But step one is, hey, if I it's getting the evidence for yourself. And then yeah, you just gotta find a doctor that's willing to work with you and understand.
Do you instead of stack them vials, we build that case.
Right. Build your case for medical necessity.
Yeah, the
So
lengths that
yeah.
we're going, did you ever think you'd turn into like a reporter for government regulations and like this is all just transpired? You ever think you'd see middle-aged white lady in Christmas sweaters getting arrested for throwing shit out of their garage in
Oh
the back
gosh,
of
the world. You know, honest It's crazy times. This is unprecedented times, but, like, like I always will say, all I did was just read the regulation over and over and over again, and some of it I even, that by this point have memorized, but it's just, like I said, with having, an intense government background and whatnot, it's just being able to really read the regulation over and over again, ingest it, and get a full understanding of it, and then, understanding the intent behind it as well. Which, I mean, it's a thing that's not, people don't normally just read regulation. I don't unless it interests me, to be honest. So it, it's just an understanding of kind of what these documents are saying, and they're not written easily. It's not easy to understand. It's also a lot of times it's worded heavily, and that's why I said I had to read it over and over again. I've been looking at these regulations off and on for the last 6 to 8 months, but you know, we just got to help each other out where we can. So
Your
this was
your strengths in this area are just so much appreciated. I remember the first time we were gonna do an interview together, and you were sending me stuff, and I was it like it, I think it would have taken like me a week just to get not even like a great understanding, just like a basic outline comprehension, because it was this agency and this agency and this agency and how they
right.
all tied together and what had precedence and how this all occurred. It's your mind is just it's amazing. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like I said, I always say all I did was read a regulation and give my opinion on it. And hopefully, because I know in our last few segments, it's been, my advice has been probably not taken as well. So hopefully, this is a bit more positive
Yeah.
and
You're
gives
lucky she
people.
came back. She's a damn hero.
No, like I said, I don't even know fully if this would work, but I call it a Hail Mary because, hey, it's worth a shot.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for taking all the scrutiny. It's hard to put yourself out there on social media. I get weird comments all the time. I let 'em ride, but, I
Yeah, and I try not to take it personally, honestly, because this is I mean, people are very emotional. Usually, I don't have any good news,
yeah.
so I get it. But it's, the reason it's kinda 2 things. The reason why I give the information the way I do, it's kinda just how I've been trained on how to present and give information. So that's just kind of a, personality trait of mine. And then on top of that, even if the news is bad, I try to give it to people in a way that they understand, because once you understand what the truth is, then you can at least try to do something to change the most likely outcome. If you're being gaslighted and lied to and you believe the lie, then you have no choice. You have no chance of changing what the outcome could be because you're living in la la land. Even if the information comes out hard, if it's information that, could lead you to the truth, it could lead you to do more research so you can even find the truth for yourself. That's going to do more for you in the long run. It's just presentation. Like I said, I got a military government background, so how things come out kind of is, yeah.
I don't think you need to explain yourself. Yeah, but you're right, though. I that's what I appreciate about it, because yeah, it stings, but it's better than the alternative, like, "Oh, compound's not going anywhere. It's gonna be here forever. We're gonna, ride off in the hills together until, the patent runs out." But I appreciate the harsh perspective of, reading all that stuff and knowing what the law is, because you're right. The information sucks, but it's better to know the hard realities of something, or the potential hard realities of something, and be able to have some kind of plan instead of just being blindsided time and time again. And I'm not saying grab the script and run to your primary care physician, like, keep using your telehealth, but like Cam said, build your case now.
Right.
So when it goes away, you got it.
You got it. You at least have a chance of transitioning somewhere else. So
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I know it's really, really late, especially where you live, but thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting us use your video.
Yes, no worries. I appreciate you for having me on. And to everyone out there who's worried, Godspeed, good luck. And just keep fighting and advocating for yourself, and you know, I'm hoping that things will work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And all Cam's information, including her TikToks and other social accounts, will obviously be linked below. And the link to her, the same video you watched me getting back on TikTok as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, you have a good evening.
You too.